Hello, my dear students. I hope you all are healthy, sound, strong. Today, I welcome you all to the chapter which is 8th chapter, biology. How do organisms reproduce? Undoubtedly, a very important chapter. Heavy marks, everything is very, very important. But when it comes to this chapter, actually the whole of biology, when I go to teach biology, it is a highly interactive topic. A good amount of discussion is needed. Good amount of transfer of thoughts is needed, and then only you will be able to understand the core idea of this topic. Same is true with this topic, how do organisms reproduce? If I start with this topic, my dear students, first and foremost, I'll try to bring it to notice, or I'll rather ask my students, is why reproduction? Why reproduction? See, before this we have learned some life processes, that is basically nutrition, we have understood respiration, we have understood excretion. These are life processes, and these are essential life processes. A living being cannot survive without these life processes. Nutrition is necessary. Respiration you can't even think about. Without respiring, any organisms can continue surviving. Is this true for reproduction? Not at all. For a living being to survive, reproduction is not needed. It is not an essential process. Then why reproduction? Why reproduction? This would have been a nice topic of healthy discussion. At times it becomes debatable if you think from philosophical point of view. Philosophy, if you if you think from social point of view, you think from family point of view, you think from happiness point of view, you think from community point of view, philosophical point of view, you take it anyway. See, I myself don't know the basic differences between these two words, because these words are so relative. But at present we are studying biology, and from biological point of view, from natural point of view, reproduction is important. From biology point of view, reproduction is important because reproduction ensures that the species continue to exist. If reproduction would not be there, all the species would have ended long back. Nobody will continue to exist because everybody dies one or the other day. And if that person or that species, I'm not talking about only human beings, any species, any living organism, plant, microbial organism, plants, animals, unicellular, multicellular, any highly sophisticated, so-called highly intelligent human beings, they would just end up, if reproduction, the process of reproduction would have not been there. So reproduction is important because reproduction ensures that the species continue to exist. That is why reproduction. What is reproduction? What is reproduction? It is basically the ability of a living organism. It is the ability of the living organism to produce another living organism similar to itself. Similar to itself. See, very, very important word, similar. You know, you have learnt geometry. You know the difference between similar and congruent. Congruent is a mathematical term. If I talk about in English or scientific language, then similar and identical, same to same. Identical means same to same. Size, shape, quality, everything same. But reproduction doesn't do that. Reproduction is the ability of a organism to produce another living organism similar to itself. This word is very important, and you have got a huge topic in the next chapter on this, that is basically variation. So we have understood why reproduction. Reproduction ensures that the certain species continue to exist. What is reproduction? Ability of an organism to produce another living organism similar to itself is called as reproduction. Now, how? Of course, how? From biological point of view, how? See, this is again very important, my dear students. See, if supposing a human being or any animal is there, any living organism, any, but I normally like to take example of human beings, because you people then are able to visualize it in a more proper way. I don't understand why they take the examples of bacteria and all, which I don't understand that. But still, it's okay, fine. You, as long as you understand, that is more important. See, if we make anything which is similar to the original. See, if supposing I want to make a copy of this paper, this note, then I need this. When I'll keep it on the Xerox machine, and then only the copy of it will be reproduced. I have to have the information on this. Whatever it is, whatever, this book of yours, I need to have a book of this. I need to have a blueprint of this. If not this copy, then at least a blueprint of this. What is a blueprint? Most of you students must be knowing the meaning of a blueprint, but still I'll give a slight, because if somebody has a doubt, or maybe you will also have a clear image of what is a blueprint. Running through this topic very fast. See, my dear students, let us take an example that supposing you are asked to solve exercise 6.3. Any exercise of maths, any exercise. You have solved the exercise, on your own, you have completed the exercise, but supposing few of your friends, classmates, they have not understood it, and they want you all people, to give your exercise to them. They take your book, they will Xerox it, and they will return it. That's what the deal has been done. And you give your book. Another set of friends come, you get your book gap, you give it to others, and supposing in that you lost your book. Every time when a copy is to be made, one copy is needed. When one copy is there, only then the other copy will be made. You can make a copy from copy, and if no copy is there, your book is needed. Is the book a blueprint? I would have loved to discuss this in front of you. My dear student, the book that you have made, that solution that you have made, that also is not a blueprint. Then what is a blueprint? Supposing that book also would have been lost, and now you have to submit your assignment. What? Will you be able to make it? Yes, you will be able to make it. You who have solved it before also, who have understood it. Why they were not able to make it? Because they never understood that solution. They never understood that those theorems used over there, and that's why they were unable to solve that exercise. But you have solved it on your own. You know what are the theorems that are used over there. You know the concept behind each and every question of that exercise. You know, you have solved it once. The image of that is stored in your brain, how you solved it. That image of yours, which will help you to reproduce another copy again, that is a blueprint. That is a blueprint. That's why you will be able to make another copy of the assignment. None of the other friends will be able to make it, those who did not solve it on their own, because that blueprint doesn't exist with them. You are the creator of the blueprint, and you have the blueprint. That is basically, blueprint is actually the complete information of the copy that is generated. It is the complete information of the copy that is generated. These type of blueprints also exist in government institutions, especially of the buildings, of the structures. They always keep the blueprint. What do they keep with them? They keep the design of the building. That design has a complete information of each and every structure used in that. Each and every beam, everything, the material used and everything is there, and that's why it is called as a blueprint. That is basically the blueprint. So when during reproduction I am going to make another living organism similar to mine, that means the information of my body, I am talking about biological terms, information of my body, how it is, my hands, my fingers, my spinal cord, my heart, my liver, how they function, in what way they function. See, don't use other brain, don't use your intelligence. Try to understand that a dog is going to give birth to another dog. So that dog is going to walk on his legs, 4 legs. The limbs are different, my limbs are different. He can't speak, I can speak. I have the ability to, I have got a different type of structure. But then these all are passed on to the next generation because they are all coded and stored in a cell, chromosomal cell, which has a DNA in it, and that in that DNA all the information, the blueprint of the whole characteristic of a body is stored in the DNA of that organism. And then that DNA is passed on to the next living being. In that living being, the DNA goes on multiplying each time and passing on the information to each and every cell, synthesizing proteins, and that living organisms develop with that information stored in the DNA. Are you getting, my dear students? In this process, of course, one more, this is not that, it is beautiful topic. It's not in that depth. Even if you go to the next chapter also, this topic is not in that depth for you all people, but it is definitely a very beautiful topic, and it is not that small. Everything is included over here. See, my dear students, it is not only the DNA, all the characteristics of the parents are stored in the DNA of the parent, but DNA doesn't do that. The codes are created by some cells and they store in the DNA. The DNA alone, just pushing the DNA into another body, another reproducing cell, small cell which is going to reproduce, just pushing the DNA in that is not going to help, because you require something who will read the information that is stored in that DNA. Each time when the DNA multiplies, how is it going to be read? So while producing the DNA, a certain cellular apparatus is again going with each time the DNA is divided. That cellular apparatus is reading the codes of the DNA. And another 2 cells are made. Again with those 2 cells, again the cellular apparatus is there, 2 cells DNA. This DNA will multiply, and with them the cellular apparatus means small other parts of the cells are needed, ribosomes and all are needed, so that they are able to, some parts are reading the code, some parts are converting the code. All these processes, everybody has a role to play in that. In that, DNA has got only one role, that it is storing the information. But there are some certain zones who convert the parental information and store in the DNA. And when the DNA goes into others, reproducing cell, it divides. At that time, there are other zones who actually convert these codes into the reproducing cells, so that the reproducing cells generate in that way, develop in that way. Okay, I am trying to keep it as short as possible. I know there will be multiple questions in your mind how this really works, but I tell you, my dear student, this will go into a different topic. That's why I'm thinking nicely how much you will be able to understand, that much I'm trying to speak. But this is definitely a very interesting topic. But at present, what you all people have to understand, that with a DNA, a cellular apparatus also goes in each division, and then the organism is there. If this coding is not done properly, and the chemical apparatus, cellular apparatus, which is there with the DNA, is unable to interpret or make out the meaning of that information stored in the DNA, if that cellular apparatus is unable to make out that, then the cell will die. That is very important, that everything is so precisely made, so accurately made. It is really a very beautiful topic to learn. Okay, so this is how DNA storage. First of all, reproduction is for reproduction. A copy is supposed to be made. A blueprint is supposed to be made, which is stored in the DNA, and the DNA goes and proliferates, and the reproducing another organism is developed. It grows. Okay. Now the next question is that, does that organism, which is the offspring, which is the second generation of the parent, is it identical to the parent? No. It will be similar to the parent. Similar means it has some variations. Variation is a big topic, especially in the next chapter. But try to understand the variation. Variation means it will have some differences from the parent. And in sexual type of reproduction, we will be learning now, there are two types of reproduction: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, there are two parents involved. Two parents, basically not necessary that they are going to be two different beings. There are two gametes, male gamete, female gamete. When they fuse together, then reproduction takes place. That is sexual reproduction. Because there is a male gamete involved, so this male gamete will be having some different characteristics, female gamete will be having different characteristics, and these two come together. So, and when the new organism is made, so definitely it will be different from entirely the male and entirely the female. If you take them separate, male and female, then this will be different from this and from this. It will be having some variations, some changes. Is it necessary? Is it necessary that variations are needed? Nice topic for discussion, my dear students. I really miss you all people to be in front of me. Why is this variation needed? This variation is needed. And if this variation is not there, there are definitely some types of reproduction where it is identical. Where it is identical. The offspring is identical to the parental spring, parental generation. If this is the type, then what is the problem? And if this is the type, then what are the advantages? In identical reproduction, what are the advantages? In variation type of reproduction, where basically it happens in sexual reproduction, what are the advantages of variation? See, my dear student, the biggest advantage is that, see, if here also they have taken in the textbook, they have taken an example of a bacteria, but I will take example of human beings again. If supposing there is a big, but remember, variation is helpful only for a society or a species as a whole. It can be, maybe, will be not profitable to the individual. If you take one living being, one human being, one frog at a time, one beetle at a time, one bacteria at a time, so maybe it will not be helpful, or maybe it will be dangerous for him, that one living being. But if you will take into consideration the whole species of a frog, or the whole species of a human species, or a whole species of cats, then definitely variation is helpful for the species to go forward. See, try to understand, I am talking about different terms. When we are talking, see, it is slightly different. Variation is definitely helpful for the species as a whole, for the society as a whole. How? See, basically, if you consider that there are a huge population of human beings staying in one big area, consider this whole big city is there and there is a population, huge number of people staying over there. In the textbook, they have taken an example of maybe some water body, small water body, in that multiple bacteria are staying. Let us consider that there is a huge city where multiple number of human beings are staying, and suddenly, if supposing a natural calamity takes place and the temperature of that area rises. I took a pause because I should have told you something before. What I should have told you before is that now, because we have variation, the human beings have the property of variation. So every human being will be having slightly different properties from the parent, from the neighbor, from everything. How? What type of properties? Like example, we can say the sea. Basically, you must have seen some people who can't tolerate heat at all. Slight rise in the temperature, they will sweat like anything. And some people, they can't tolerate cold. You must have seen that, and they can't tolerate cold. If it is cold, the first person who becomes sweaty when slight rise in temperature is very comfortable. When actually there is a drop in the temperature, he is very comfortable over there. हाँ, ये अच्छा है. But the other person who actually is comfortable in the higher zone will not be comfortable in the lower temperatures. Basically, that is the variation. Some are very comfortable with cold water, some are not comfortable with cold water. That is the variation I am talking about. So suddenly, if there is a rise in the temperature in such area, then definitely there will be many of the species that will die. Many of the human beings will die because they are unable to tolerate that. But there are some human beings who have that variation of tolerating the high or continuing their life in the higher temperatures. They will survive. That variation is needed. Supposing if we go in the reverse way, supposing there would be a sudden drop in the temperature, then definitely those people who would have survived for the higher temperature would die over here. Are you getting? I am going in the reverse fashion. See, this is a B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Supposing these are the people who have the variation, the property by which they can withhold high temperatures. They can survive in high temperatures and they can survive in cold temperatures. That variation is there because that is the property, inbuilt property. It has developed automatically in them. It is basically naturally selected. Who will do that? Who will think that A will be having this property of tolerating high temperature, F is having the property of tolerating low temperature? It is a natural selection. You and me have got no role to play over there. That is what is called as natural selection. Now what happens? Supposing there is a sudden rise in the temperature, then definitely it is possible that these will end up with their life, but they will continue. And at the end of the day, the species continues to exist. Right? If supposing there would be a sudden drop in the temperature, then they will discontinue. They may die, but then they will continue. Whatever said and done, under both the circumstances, species as a whole will continue to exist. That is the property of variation. But this property may be not good for an individual. See, because of this variation, G died, E died, F died, E died, A, B, C, D survived. It is good for here if you are an individual in this group and there is sudden rise in temperature, then it is good for you. But at that time it was bad for a certain individual. But it is always good for the society as a whole, for the species as a whole, it is always good. See, this variation is very, very, very important, because the variation will help you to survive. Some more examples can be given, but this topic is not that large, so we have to go to the main topic of the chapter. See, this is, if there would have been some interaction, then we would have gone into some depth also, but we will have to control this discussion over here. I hope that you have got the importance of variation. The importance of variation is, it is always good for the species as a whole to survive. At the same time, because there is a question over there, what is the importance of DNA copying in the reproduction, that I have given. Why is variation beneficial to the species but not necessarily for the individual? There is a question over there. So it is beneficial for the species because as a species as a whole continue to survive because of variation. And then you can give an example over here that is given in the textbook itself. If there was a population of bacteria living in temperate waters, some bacteria are living in water, and if the water temperature were to be increased by global warming, because of global warming the temperature of water would have been started to rise, most of these bacteria would die, but the few variants resistant to heat would survive and grow further. They would survive and they would grow further. Variation is this helpful for the survival of species over time. Species will continue to survive, but it may not be necessarily good for the individual, because some individual as an individual it will die. It is definitely good for the species. Okay, so with this we can end up the introduction part, and of course variation is more in depth. It is studied in next chapter, which is important chapter again. Then we go into the actual topic of reproduction. Reproduction it takes place in two major ways. One is asexual reproduction and the other one is sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction most of the times this is identical. Most of the times this is identical because there is one parent involved. So only one information is going to be passed to the next generation. So definitely there will be very, very less variations, actually no variation at all. You can consider in that way. Especially supposing the topic first one is fission. What are the various modes of reproduction? Various modes of reproduction. The first topic is fission. Very simple topic, nothing great to happen in this topic. In fission, basically unicellular organisms are involved in this type of fission. It is simple that supposing there is one cell is there, then what happens, this cell, first of all the nucleus, whichever is a nucleus, this nucleus starts to divide. This is the cell. The nucleus starts to divide slowly, steadily. The nucleus starts to divide, and when after the nucleus, then slowly, steadily the cell also starts to divide. Okay, and then slowly, steadily there are two different cells formed. This is basically binary fission. Fission again has two types. Basically binary fission where only two daughter cells are produced. Binary means two daughter cells are produced from one parent cell. Usually amoeba. Amoeba is the example of this. Amoeba, Paramecium and all. Then the next topic is basically you have what amoeba. Here again we will have one more important thing. They can divide in any axis. They can have a lateral axis, They can have a longitudinal axis. There is an example for you, leishmania. Leishmania, here basically the diagram I will not be able to draw in a better way. It is like this, something of this sort, and then so many are there, I don't know. Then what happens is that then this from here it starts to divide like this. There is a first it will take not this, and it goes on dividing, and then finally there will be two structures over here. Basically, so here this is longitudinal axis. It is cut from here longitudinal way. They are separated. So this axis can be lateral axis, this can be longitudinal axis, or then in an amoeba how it is in any way. It is not necessary. So that axis can be there. There is a different thing. This is binary fission, and one thing is called as multiple fission. See here in multiple fission, this normally takes place during basically it starts in unfavorable conditions. This is during favorable conditions. Condition is favorable, good, means for the daughter cells to survive. Then the parent cell will go on dividing, and they divide. The nucleus goes on dividing, and the parent cells divide into two, and the daughter cells then continue to grow. But certain times the conditions are not good. Outside the conditions are not good, they are unfavorable. During that time what happens, if any organism is there, this is the normal organism. Here, this time what happens, normally there is a cyst that is formed. There is a cyst, a covering, a nice covering, a protective covering is formed, and the cells then go on dividing. The condition outside is not favorable, so they go on dividing, and this cyst definitely maintains and protects these divisions. The daughter cells, they are inside. This is called as multiple fission, because here when actually now supposing slowly steadily condition becomes favorable, and when the condition outside condition becomes favorable, then this cyst, it breaks open, and then these daughter cells are released, and they are multiple at that time when they are released. This is the cyst which breaks when the condition outside are favorable. At that time this breaks, and then the daughter cells are released. Here this is called as multiple fission, because definitely there are multiple cells formed at that time. Okay, the example over here is Plasmodium. They have told example of Plasmodium. And even Leishmania. Okay, this is basically fissions, binary fission and multiple fission. These are basically good topic and heavy topics. They can come for diagrams also, by multiple fission, binary fission. They can come for drawing diagrams also. Sorry my dear friends. Now the next is fragmentation. Fragmentation, I think you all know. This is basically multicellular. These are unicellular. This fragmentation from here, it starts with multicellular but not very complex. Multicellular, simple living organism. They are very simple living organisms. Here what happens, the best example of here is Pyrogyra, which you have done in your lower standards. Here the cell is divided into fragments. When this continuous cell is there, then this breaks into fragments. They break into fragments. These basically are fragments, and each fragment then develops into a complete organism. Okay, the best example of this is Spirogyra. Spirogyra is the best example of this. So this is fragmentation. I hope you all are getting this. It is not at all that difficult. You can just go through the textbook. See, basically here the next topic what they are dealing in between is they are going slightly off track. See here what happens, this is definitely a unicellular organism, so there is nothing to bother much. Multicellular organism, but having a very simple organism which does not have a huge pattern to follow. Why? Because this type of divisions, actually this whole asexual mode of reproduction is not that much complex. You just have to guess a very small amount of information from the parent is supposed to be passed to the daughter cells. So there is not a big deal over there. But same cannot be used during sexual reproduction. Now that information we can give when we are entering into sexual reproduction. In between they have given over here. Now the next topic is regeneration. We will go into that topic also. What is the last paragraph of fragmentation. So here next topic is regeneration. Regeneration is slightly different. And the best example of this, planaria. Planaria is the animal who looks like this. This is basically, supposing this animal is cut into pieces. Supposing like this, like this, like this. It has got cut into pieces. What will happen then? This each piece, if I consider this head, which was only this much, will then start developing. It will start developing and develop the whole body. This big trunk which was there will again start developing, and the whole body will be developed. Okay, if I think about the tail part, that also will start developing and the whole body will be developed. This is called as regeneration. Regeneration. This is basically when what is the regeneration they have told? Is the ability of the organisms to generate lost or damaged body parts. It is the ability of the organism to generate. That's why it is called as regeneration. They are generating the lost or damaged body parts. Just imagine if a finger is cut and I left it over there. Within some days or maybe how many ever time, from that finger, my finger will grow back. From that finger again a huge human being is formed. That is regeneration. But then what is the problem of this? Regeneration is carried out by specialized cells. But there is one problem. Can anybody guess the problem of this regeneration? There is only one big, this is really a very good topic that needs again interaction. See, the problem of regeneration is that, see, if there is a planaria over here and the planaria has to reproduce, if that planaria is deciding that I want to reproduce, I want to have next generation, he can't do it. He himself or she herself, the planaria itself can't do it. Why? Because to regenerate, it has to be cut, and it will not be able to cut its own self. Somebody has to come and cut it, and then only it will be able to regenerate. Otherwise, these all organisms, binary fission, multiple fission, they are doing on their own. Just imagine, they are to controlling that they are seeing that condition is not favorable outside, so they are making a cyst, and then they are dividing inside, and they wait for the conditions to be favorable, and then they are releasing the daughter cells. So much in control is their reproduction. But same is not in the case of regeneration. It is nowhere in its own control. It has to wait for somebody to come and cut it, and only then its regeneration will start. That is the problem of regeneration. Okay, so that is done, regeneration. Budding is a very important topic. This, actually speaking, we have seen in the case of many see, basically this is the best example. Budding is there again. The best example of this is Hydra. This again can be a topic for the diagram. This again diagram is very important. Hydra, which shows that the budding is there. Usually Hydra is something that has something of this sort. Then what happens is that this Hydra, should have drawn it smaller. This Hydra, from anywhere a bud is formed. The rest part is same, my dear students. A bud is formed. Then this bud then grows into another Hydra over here. And slowly, steadily, this Hydra, once it is developed enough, then it is released. And another Hydra is formed. This is basically budding. Okay? Nothing more in that, but this is again a type of reproduction, of course multicellular. And then it is a vegetative propagation, which is again a very important vegetative propagation. In vegetative propagation, any part of the plant, especially this happens in vegetative propagation, so it will happen in plants. So any part of the plant can have the ability of growing into an entire different plant. It can be a root, like it happens in potato. In potato, the root develops into another potato. So sweet potato both. And root can develop into another plant, or a stem can develop into another plant. Stem, like best example is can be a rose. We can see that a rose, if we take a stem of a rose, you plant it and it can grow into another rose plant. Leaves, even a leaf, you keep a leaf, some plants are there, you keep the leaf in the water, on the margins roots will be developed, and from there another plant can be developed. You just have to take it out and then you plant it, and another plant will be developed. Otherwise there also it can grow nicely, very effectively it will grow. So this is basically vegetative propagation. Any part of the plant can give rise to another plant. That is basically vegetative propagation. Okay, and here one more important thing is there, tissue culture. This is again very important, and this is very much used in medical professions. Here what happens, they take the tip of the organisms. The tip is cut. The tip is cut, and that tip is then transformed into another atmosphere. Over there, the tip has a highly developing cells. They are fastly developing, rapidly developing cells. This tip is cut, and then it is placed into a different atmosphere over there, and in different setup over there, they again start budding. They again start multiplying. There, a high amount of nutrition is supplied to them. A very good amount of nutrition is supplied to them, and then they start multiplying again and again. And slowly, steadily, afterwards, a callus is formed. This callus is finally moved into another one, and an entire plant is developed. This is basically tissue culture. This is done even in the tissues. In medical profession also this is used, especially when they have to see the diagnosis of the patient is done, then what is the bacteria that is present in the body. They do the culture of that tissue, and they see how that culture is developing, the bacteria, how it is developing. From the mode of its development, then they come to know whether that bacteria, how harmful it is. That's why this tissue culture is one of the very important topic in today's medical world. Next is spore formation. Spore formation, usually this you will see when a mucor or anything is kept on a bread. This is it happens on the bread, actually speaking. When you keep the bread for a long period of time, then afterwards it will smell and it will turn bad. That bread, if you take under a microscope and study under a microscope, you will see that there are basically lots of mucor formed over there. That is basically spores over there. Spores are nothing but, see, there will be a nice stem over here, and then there are these spores over there. Here inside this sporangia there are small spores present. So what happens is that they burst open again during favorable conditions, or when the conditions are good enough. They burst open, and then the pores are there, and then they develop into a new organism. Okay, that is basically an idea of the spores. But the only thing is that, one good thing is that these spores can also be dislocated from here, and they go and fall on the other ground, other good ground, bad ground, nutrition rich ground, or whatever it is. But the good thing is that when it falls down, it is always covered by a thick cover which protects the spores inside, which protects and when they come in contact with another good surface where they can develop, at that time this wall, it breaks, and then it starts developing over there. That is the good thing over. They have got a protective wall. This is a protective wall in which the actual grains are located, and they are protected by these spores. Okay, this is the topic. So these all topics basically we have learnt by now, they all come under asexual mode of reproduction. Whatever we have learnt, binary fission, where one parent cell divides into two daughter cells, is binary fission. The example of this is amoeba. We have seen that. And this diagram also is very important. This can come for diagram. It can come for drawing the whole diagram or for labeling the diagram. Next is multiple fission. In the multiple fission, where actually we have got example of paramecium, I suppose. Paramecium and plasmodium. Plasmodium is there, where actually speaking, when the conditions outside are not favorable, at that time the cells keep on multiplying inside. There is a cyst formed on the outside, and the cells go on multiplying inside. They go on multiplying, and when the conditions are favorable, then the cyst opens, and then all the cells are released. Because there are huge number of cells, daughter nuclei produced, that's why it's called as multiple fission. Then comes fragmentation, and these both are basically unicellular organisms. From here the multicellular organism starts. But these multicellular organisms, though they are multicellular, they are very simple organisms. Very simple. Simple in the sense they don't have highly specialized tissues, highly specialized systems. We are human beings or animals, dogs and all. They come into multicellular, highly complex organism because we have got different systems. Organs have their specific functions to do. We have different digestive system, we have different respiratory system, we have different excretory system, we have different nervous system. So these all are different systems, and they all perform their own functions and in highly synchronized fashion. They are so much synchronized to each other. That's why, and this is just a sketch that I have told, that's why they are all multicellular, highly complex organisms. But these modes of reproduction which are there in these cases, asexual reproduction, fragmentation is there, multicellular, simple. Here fragments are produced. Parent cell gives rise to two fragments, and then each fragment develops into a new organism. This is fragmentation. Regeneration basically is where an organism have the ability to regenerate its lost body part or a damaged body part into a complete organism. That is basically regeneration. The best example of this is planaria. The example over here is Spirogyra. This is regeneration, and of course, but here the big point of this regeneration is that it has to wait for the body part to be cut. It cannot regenerate on its own. That is the defect of this type of vision, this type of reproduction. Budding is the process where basically the example is Hydra, where a bud is formed on any body part of the organism, and that bud develops into a separate organism. First of all, it develops nicely, and when it is capable enough of developing into a complete organism, then it is separated from the parent organism, and then a new organism is developed. Okay, and then we come to spores. That is all. No? Vegetative propagation is there. Vegetative propagation basically it normally is seen in plants. It's not in bacteria or anything like that. It is normally seen in plants where roots can develop into a complete plant. Example, potato, where the potato, basically the roots develop into a complete potato, or a stem can develop into a complete plant. Ginger is also an example of this stem developing into a complete plant. Another ginger. Rose is also there. Or leaf, the margins of the leaf also can develop into the roots, and these roots can further develop into the complete plant. This is again vegetative propagation. This all comes under vegetative propagation. And then we have finally spore formation. This is basically the mucor. We can see the best example of this is when the bread is kept for a long period of time in open. Then we can see a smell coming out of this. At that time, if you see, there are lots of mucor formed over there. They basically are spores formed over there. Spores are protective walls of the pollen grains that are inside. When these spores, they can fall off on some other surface, and these spores, they protect the cells inside. When they are on the nutritive cells, then they can break open, and then the pollen grains develop over there. Okay, this is spore formation. Okay. Then there are some questions. How does binary fission differ from multiple fission? So in binary fission, there are only two daughter nucleus formed, where in multiple fission, there are more than two daughter cells formed, non-nuclear daughter cells formed. Okay, these all are things. With this, we can consider that, but these all are asexual mode of reproduction. You must have seen that every time it is just a parent cell which is dividing into two or multiple, or a parent, from a parent cell another plant is produced, budded out. There is no formation of a female gamete or a male gamete, or unification of any two parts which are given by contribution that is done by the two genders. Nothing is of that sort. Sexual reproduction is another topic which is definitely a big topic and very, very important topic. This includes, because this is normally seen with highly developed plants, animals, in both the cases. Highly developed means why this? Because see, each organ is going to function in a different way. It is not that just a cell is going to develop into a complete plant, into a complete microorganism, and that cell again is going to divide and grow into a complete organism. Nothing like, where only one cell is going to perform all the functions. One cell is going to do the function of nutrition, having nutrition, of excretion, developing into a nuclei. If one cell is going to do everything, so that is okay, that can be easily done. But when in highly developed animals, where there each organ has its own function to be done, each organ, and then from the organ one system again is made, and each system again has a different function to be done, to be performed. So a simple mechanism of splitting into two nucleus, into two cells or three cells is not going to help, because we have got huge amount of information that has to be passed on from one cell to the other cell. See the basic. So what if it is a multicellular highly developed organism? The basic life has started from one cell. That one cell is continuously developing, and each time it has to locate each organs in its own place. The heart has to be placed in its position with its complete function, with its complete information of how the heart is going to function. The liver has to be placed in its place with the liver having the complete information of how it is going to be functioning. The cells of the liver will function like a cell, the cells of the heart will function like a heart, the cells of the nose will function like a nose. So these all informations also are supposed to be transferred. For this you can't just take a mechanism which helps in development of a simple living organism. So that's why sexual reproduction is highly complex mode of reproduction. Again, a very, very, very important topic, very nice topics. These topics are really very beautiful topics, my dear friends. Of course, it is not, again, the problem is that it is not in that depth with you all people, but these are really very important topics. So we will go into this in the next lecture, sexual reproduction. Why sexual reproduction? I can at least touch this. See, basically here, just to introduce this topic, I told you variation is very important. Variation is highly important, especially in evolution of the species. It is very, very important. If variation is not there, then maybe species won't be able to continue, because you know that things change in different ways. See, if a Mr. X who is staying in India gets relocated or shifted to any polar country, maybe to US, the zones are totally different. The atmosphere over there in US is totally different from the atmosphere in India. Over there Mr. X goes and gets married over there. Maybe the wife also is from India, they go over there and they both get married over there. The atmosphere over there is totally different from the atmosphere of India. Maybe Mr. X and Mrs. X are not that much comfortable and not that much adaptive to that atmosphere. But when they give birth to their child, that child will be born with those variations, that child will be able to adapt to those conditions over there. That is basically because of variation. That's why variation is very, very, very important. It definitely takes into consideration all the characteristics present in the parent, both the parent, and then it gives birth to the next generation. Sometimes giving variations considering the atmosphere over there also. So that is why a sexual reproduction is very, very helpful, because in sexual reproduction variations takes place healthily. Okay, my dear students, with this I end up with today's lecture, and then we can go with sexual reproduction in the next topic. Okay, my dear students, thank you.